Now we are back from the break, and we are going to talk about comparing the Michael Yee PA1 to other solid-state amplifiers. So how does it find its place in the competition? So when you think about it, the current version of it, the PA3, is under $1,800. So think about that price range and above and beyond what's going on. And before I go into that, I would say that it easily holds up its place in the $5,000 price range, unmodified. And if you apply those modifications that I've seen, and like the addition of the screen to the transformer and power supply caps, plus upgrading the input and output wires, internal wires, then it will hold its place in the $10,000 category easily. And I talk about it more, and some of the references how does it relate to them, what you can think about that. One of the solid state amps that I like is the Adcom GFA 555, and this Adcom is a really powerful amp. It puts out 200 watts per channel into 8 ohms, which is 4 times as much as the Michael Yee PA1. But do not think that it sounds more powerful because of that, or don't jump into any conclusions, because now I share with you how they relate to each other and what power means and what quality means. So the PA1 is in a higher quality league than the GFA 555, but they also have different speakers that they are compatible with. So for example, the GFA 555, it's really excellent with electrostatic speakers, and electrostatics, they require tremendous current drive to fuel them, and with electrostats, they sound wonderful. So they are super speakers. So if you want some great music and you have electrostatic speakers and you are on a limited budget, just pick up a used GFA 555. It doesn't matter if it's like 15 years old or 20 years old. They are really overspec'd, and you can drive it at 200 watts continuous, and then it's fine. They can take it. They are really overbuilt, so it's not spec'd like, okay, we put on a 200 watt and it's like if you accidentally hit a 200 watt and 1 watt peak, then it breaks down. No, you can continuously hit it with 200, and they can dump tremendous current, so they can drive your electrostats and current hungry speakers really well. However, if you want to scale them up and match it with the speakers that are at a higher quality level, if you throw high sensitivity speakers that allow you to hear more into the music, then the problems with GFA start to come up. So I tried out the GFA with my higher sensitivity speakers, the void pipe, the Fostex void pipe, which is about 95 dB efficient, and the Zenith open baffle that uses Alnico speakers, and that's also about 95 dB efficient, and the result was really truly disappointing. It was completely overwhelming, and my 1.5 watt single-ended triode outdid it in every respect. It was like it was like everyone who heard it was clearly just really like bottom of the rung. So the Adcom is perfect with speakers that are current hungry, and it can create enjoyable music with them. It doesn't have that refined harmonic riches, so if you want to listen to cello sonatas or violin sonatas, it's not your choice. But for most of the material that people listen to, it's I would say it's fantastic, but it doesn't scale up. So if you keep on increasing the quality of your rest of your gears, it will not hold up. Now let's look at another one, Marantz surround receiver, the NR1603. It's 60 watts per its 2 dedicated channels, and it's also a surround channels. It's not that much, into 8 ohms, and that one, I would say it's if you use like low sensitivity speakers and use it in the same system, then you will hear performance similar to the Michael Yee. But the big in like audiophile terms, the Michael Yee will have a little advantage over it, not that much, but the most noticeable thing will be is that the Marantz has a plastic taste to it. So it's like a consumer product flavor. So since Marantz, so in the beginning, Marantz was Saul Marantz's company, so he was the genius behind it, and then when it was sold and then turned into a corporate money-making business, then now it's much more consumer oriented and not like a musician high-end, like really refined taste oriented. It's just using the name produce lower quality products, which sounds still not bad, but it's I would not consider using it for as a main music source. Maybe it's okay for home theater from time to time. I have such a setup in my bedroom, and that's for, you know, like before going to sleep, like before passing out, watch a movie or something from the bed, but not for your dedicated high expectations. And other things you could compare it, maybe like which are not exactly considered audiophile amps, but it would be probably very interesting because most of us, we start from that part. That's the first thing you get. Maybe like a Sony receiver or an Onkyo or Yamaha receiver. How does it compare from that? So if you have like a Sony right now and you are thinking of stepping up, what is it that you can expect? So Sony would be, I would say, at the bottom of the rung with compared to these other two companies, and it's not because it's lower quality. They are about the same build quality, but Sony has its philosophy about sound, that they have this wall of sound idea that the owner of Sony and founder, he came up with that idea, and that basically is taking away three-dimensionality, spatiality from the sound, and it feels like the sound is flat, and Sony colors its sound in a really noticeable way. In the higher end series of Sony, this coloration is much less noticeable and the wall of sound effect is much less. But in the consumer range, you have this wall of sound thing that which doesn't have those qualities that we think about when we think about audiophile products. So for audiophile, I would say the two qualifications are transparency, so you can see or hear into what's happening. You can hear into the layers and fine structure of the music. And the second is the spatiality. So you are not just hearing sound coming at you, but you are seeing, you are surrounded by a performance. So you have, it's kind of like a much higher vantage vantage point, a viewpoint. I wanted to say the two things at the same time. So a much higher vantage, a view on the information that your ears are getting. Onkyo and Yamaha are better in that aspect. They do not transform the sound to such a degree, but they at least those entry models that I heard, they still cannot do the transparency, they cannot do the three-dimensionality, at least with the stock speakers they sell them with. I have not tried them with the higher quality speakers. If you look at Stereopolis, his post, he has a really nice Yamaha amp of the higher series. Yamaha has a special series. Unfortunately, I haven't heard any of that special series amp, and he tries his good quality, high quality audiophile speakers with his Yamaha, and he reports it sounds great. There's Real Hi-Fi help, and he also reported he has a friend who has such a Yamaha amplifier, and also reports excellent result from that. Why? For Yamaha and Onkyo, I can tell that these companies are really careful to voice their products to have a nice musical sound. So it means that they have tonal balance in their products. And actually in most consumer products, when you have solid state amplifiers, the good thing is at that level, when you do not need high transparency, high resolution imaging, then it's relatively easy and cheap to make a solid state amp that it has both tonally correct presentation and output at a certain wattage. But when you want to refine the sound to be able to hear smaller and more minute differences, then usually tonality goes out the windows. And that happens with Adcom too. Especially if you try to hook it up with more sensitive speakers, as the higher you go in sensitivity, the more the tonality breaks down. If you hook it up to electrostats, then that tonality discrepancy is not as big, it's much lower, but then it falls apart. Marantz is better in that aspect, but I would say that the new Marantz surround stuff and receivers and amps, they have their own sweet, syrupy, plasticky sound, and that just stays. They can handle improving your speakers and sensitivity better, but that voicing, it stays with them. And some people like it, and if you like it, perfect, but to me that's like an extra added coloration that I don't really need to hear. And the Michael Yee amp, the PA1, it is super good in this aspect because it has a very nice tonality, it has tonal balance. Michael Yee puts in a really big effort to make sure that all his amps have a harmonically correct sonic signature. So it's not just by chance, it's by design and effort that this amplifier is a musical amplifier, and it handles tonality and harmonic content well. And when we look at like really expensive price categories like a Dan D'Agostino amp, I have not heard them with high sensitivity speakers, only heard them with Wilson audio speakers, and they can do a lot of things, but I did not like the tonal characteristic of that combination, but I can say that it's largely because of the speakers, and I don't know how Dan's amps would sound on their own with different set of speakers. So I suspect that probably, I think musicality wise they're pretty decent, and probably they have good tonality as well, but the speakers effect on them was I could hear purely what the speakers are doing when I was listening to that. So I think probably Dan's amps are nice and neutral and good sounding, and that's what I hear from the community, that his amps are pretty good. But in this comparison, there's really no place to compare these two amps, because they are of a totally different price category. There's like 100 times multiplier between the price, so it doesn't really compute and doesn't relate. But I wanted to show that, so to see you where you are on the scale in the range of amplifiers. So basically, if you want a solid state amp that's noticeably or significantly better, then you have to rob a bank or talk to them for a discount. Okay, so speakers. Now this is really critical. What kind of speakers can we match with the PA1, and it will not satisfy current hunger? Actually, then D'Agostino's amps, they are perfect. If you have like dead cows that need to be jolted back to life with massive amounts of current, then they can do that. But the Michael Yee amplifier was designed for real world speakers, not for speakers that really require ridiculous current. And I apologize for those who have electrostatic speakers. I do not consider them in the dead cow category, because that's like a totally different kind of making sound. But if you have an electrodynamic speaker, there's no excuse in the world why it needs to be like a current hungry dead animal. So in that case, for speakers, solid state amplifiers love low efficiency speakers, and that's because if the efficiency is lower, then it means that from the same amount of information you get a relatively narrow dynamic range packaged out. And when you have that narrow dynamic range, then it's not as obvious if there's a clipping distortion happening in the sound. And if you go higher in the efficiency, the more you will see the effects of your amp pooping out at the microtransients. And people think that no, it's the speaker's problem, because it's just too wimpy and it became shouty and harsh. No, your amp is shouty and harsh, but until now the speakers masked it because they could not resolve, they did not show. So the window to the sound of your amp was semi-shut, and now the window is wide open and everything comes out. In the case of the Michael Yee, the good things come out. So when you add high efficiency speakers, like I have my voice over Lancelot speakers, and they are over 100 dB efficient, and they really show that this amp can step up even more than what I thought previously. So that's what makes it a truly special amp, because if you are prepared to go all the way, like to get a system that you want to evolve, then you can keep the PA1 in your system, and it will step up every time you improve your CD player, your DAC, your speakers. So that's the really big thing about it, and that's why I think it is truly special, because it can step up, and I haven't heard any solid state amp that can step up. There's, for example, the CJ350, which is really a statement in solid state amplification, and it's a really expensive amplifier, and it cannot step up that way that the PA1 can. So it's a really good amp, and it's worth its asking price, even double than that. But anyway, but the PA1 is the one that can step up to the level of the CJ, and it's at a fraction of the price of the CJ. And plus, we have another problem, is that for CJ the parts availability is getting low, but for PA1 you are still good to go with it. And Mike has the newer versions coming out. He has now PA3 version, and And if you get like PA1, 2, 3, you'll be fine and happy and in really good hands. So let's now just put up or put together a dream setup around the Michael Yee PA1 or its younger siblings. So for speakers, I really can recommend Vandersteen, Ryan, or Verity speakers. So these brands, if used, they have excellent speakers, and they can be mated with the PA1 with terrific results. And for cabling, you can use Kimber, AudioQuest, or Harmonic Technologies. It will mix really well with these speakers. And for preamp, you can just use an AVC or TVC, which is like a transformer-based passive volume control. It has enough gain that you will be able to enjoy it. Active preamps, that's a really limiting factor, and I cannot really recommend any real-world preamps that would be good. That's a really hardcore, and whatever you put in would just bring down the whole system a level lower compared to a transformer based or autoformer based solution. And for the front end, if you just want to go on the cheap, just get a PS Audio DL3 DAC. I know it's an old one, but the thing with them, with these older DACs, is that there are some of them, like this DL3, it's really over designed. It has a bigger transformer inside than most power amplifiers. It's really super massive. It's built to last, built for life, and it has a very musical sound. With most DACs, the problem is that the development went towards getting more resolution, more of everything, but the musicality is plummeting at the same time. So as you rack up all the technical specifications, all the inventions, everything good, perfect, glowing reviews, but musicality goes down rock bottom basement. But the DL3 is a very musical DAC, and it will make listening to your music a very enjoyable experience, and you can play a wide range of music with it. It will not limit your listening like a lot of DACs do. And then of course you can use whatever for transport you want, a streamer or computers or CD transport. And if you want to add a turntable system to it, if you want to go a really cheap one, like for example get a direct drive turntable like a Technics or a Rega P3, get a used one. And for a cartridge, get a Grado Prestige, or one of the, if you are lucky, you can get a used Benz online, maybe like an H2O, that was their entry level cartridge, and get a Hagerman Cornet phono stage. And if you put these three together, you get a really kick-ass, really killer vinyl system at the very cheap that sounds extremely musical, and you will be really happy with it. The Grado Prestige, it doesn't have much resolution, it has very little resolution in fact, but it has great tone. If you listen to jazz or you listen to pop music, it's perfect. For classical music, I cannot recommend it. So why am I recommending this setup? Because the Grado Prestige is a super duper cheap cartridge if you are getting the black version, for example. With the others, if you go blue or red, you are getting better deals, more suitable for classical music, but it's like a dream setup for a real world price. And the Hagerman Cornet, it's an absolute giant killer phono stage. I cannot emphasize it enough. You can buy it online, that's why I mention it. And Jim also makes the big brothers of cornet, the violin and the trumpet. He doesn't make violin anymore, so I'm extremely super lucky that I have one. He made very few of them, but he still makes the trumpet, the new version of the trumpet, but I cannot recommend the trumpet and the violin with the PA1 because they have too much dynamic resolution, and they will drive the PA1 to distort at the high frequencies, so it cannot handle that. I will go into that in one of my next things. So that's one of my number one things with solid state amplifiers, is that for classical music just forget them, but with Michael Yee PA1 not yet, because if you use digital sources, it's really good and you can throw classical music. But if you use vinyl, if you use like a lower vinyl setup, and that's why I recommend the Grado Prestige, because it doesn't have that high dynamic resolution capacity for the top end, it will not excite the clipping characteristics of solid state amps. So this applies to other solid state amps as well. If you want a functioning vinyl rig, get something like that. And do not max it out like you get like a $30,000 vinyl rig with a solid state amp, because that would be just murder, really, really bad sound. And not because the vinyl sounds bad, it's because it makes your solid state amp clip left and right. And how much? I will show it in the next video. Just right now, let me see what's on my next slide. Yes, this is what I want to talk about. As you know, in the old days, we had these slogans that digital ready. Your amplifier and your speakers are digital ready. In the 80s when CD came out, and people were like, big eyed, what? Digital ready? That's cool, man. But back then, that was BS. It didn't mean anything, and digital sucked wind at that time. So it was just a slogan. But here, for the Michael Yee, I can say that it's truly digital ready, because it can handle digital really, really well. So if you are streaming or playing CDs, you can go from lowest quality to highest quality digital thrown at it, and it will play music. So that's what we did on the weekend with my audio buddy Erwin, is that he brought over his laptop, and then we streamed high-res files. You know, Mark Levinson has now some really high-quality music that you can stream from him. We tried that out. It's fantastic. We tried like Starker's cello sonatas, Bach cello sonatas. It sounded great. We also tried the streaming from the Blu-ray, lots of different stuff like electronica music, even like Prodigy, and really like house and whatnot that has like tremendous bass in it, and really high demands on the amplifier, and it can handle it. It's really, really kick-ass, really perfect. So both high quality, both low quality, CD, laptop, Blu-ray, whatever, it's gorgeous, it's great. So if you are, your main diet of music is digital, then go for it. If your main diet is vinyl, then I would say tubes only, no solid state amps. Maybe, I don't know, a Dan D'Agostino might be able to handle vinyl, but if you want vinyl in the lower resolution version, yes, the PA1 can handle it. That level of system that I described, you will be very happy with it. But if you want to scale up, go for the big boys in the vinyl field, then it won't be able to, because it cannot handle those really fast, high energy transients that come through vinyl, and apparently digital doesn't have these transients, because from that you can use the Michael Yee with digital media to a much better result. Although I have to add that I made that recording for you, the Waterlily acoustics with Kavi Alexander, Ustad Imrat Khan playing the Surbahar, the bass sitar, and there actually maybe it's not evident, I think you probably didn't notice it, but when he's playing like full blast, then when I listened to it, I could hear that the sound started to get more restrained. Even though I was, if I calculated the level, I maybe hit like 70 dB peak volume. So I was listening to basically 1 milliwatts continuous, plus transient peaks jumping up from 1 milliwatt, a thousandth of a watt. But this recording did not use any compression, and that constant milliwatt signal had probably a several watt transient coming with it, and that was enough to add enough clipping that I could notice it. When you listen to it, it's probably fine, but then next day I hooked up my 1 watt single-ended amp, and that, like, oh my god, it just like really opened up those transients to such a degree that it was like my eyes popped out of their sockets. And it's just a 1 watt amplifier. So I would say that if your material is completely uncompressed, has like really high transient in it, then just be mindful of that. But for 99% of the music that you can come across, and it's in the digital format, you will be in audio heaven. So that's where I really want to end this review, is that it's really a fantastic solid state amp. As everything in audio, it has its compromises, but I don't want you to get fixated on the weaker sides, because it has so much positives. I never seen any solid state amplifier that has so many positive sides as the PA1. So that's why I call it the solid state amplifier of the decade, and I hope that whoever has heard it and or owns this amp, I think they wholeheartedly agree with that statement. And I just added Neil Peart, the drummer of Rush. Sadly he passed away, but we listened to him on the PA1 on the weekend, and it's just phenomenal. So if you are into drums, modern drum sets, then this is your amp. Get the PA1. You want to listen to Rush, PA1. Don't think about anything else. Only if you have speakers that are current hungry, for those speakers it won't work. But if you have something like a realistic excellent speaker like the Wondersteins, Ryans, Verity, then PA1 is your amp. Well, this is something extra. I don't know really if I want to talk about it. So always we have thrown at us that, solid state amps are like so flat response, speakers are supposedly flat response, but every single solid state amp I heard in my life, in the real living room, in real situation at your home, behaves like this. That you have the mid-range basically, or like upper bass to mid-range, and it's at a flat level, and then for the bass you have a boost for the mid bass, and then the boost for the lower bass, it already trails down, just the predominant mid bass, and then also you have a rising top end response as well. And the the Michael Yee is not exempt from this character either, but it does it in a much more refined and cultured way than most solid state amps do. So if you have a tube amp, I draw with blue, then usually they have, if this is the mid-range, then they usually just keep like this. The line is relatively straight for the top end, and for the bottom, mid-range, it depends on the amp design, but sometimes they can have a little bit of a dip for the mid-range in comparison, or just keep straight. And their bass, like upper bass, mid bass, deeper bass, is much more coherently together than with solid state amps. And because solid state amps have a little hump for the mid bass, that's why we hear it as if they have better bass, but not really. What they have is poor mid-range compared to the bass. And when you have a good tube amplifier, not just any tube, a good tube amplifier, then the bass, mid-range and highs are at the same caliber, same level. But when you have a good solid state amp, then the mid bass jumps out from the rest of the range, and then the top end also jumps out, and it's really rare to have a solid state amp that has really good mid-range. That's always the Achilles heel of every solid state amp. And where the PA1 excels is that it's not as weak as with most solid state amps. It's still quite below, noticeably much below a very good tube amp, but I heard plenty of tube amps that did not have as good mid-range as the PA1. So well done. That's saying a lot. What else? That's all. So thank you for being curious, and I hope you find it useful. And let me know if you run across this amp, or you run across solid state amps that really made a big impact on you, that made music accessible for you. I haven't mentioned that what this amp can do is it can play with emotions. So when you add high sensitivity speakers to it, then really the emotionality in the music really starts coming out at you. And I never really seen solid state amps that can do that they can open a window to the emotional content of the music. And if you have the right speaker, also with the Vandersteins to a certain degree, it can do emotionality, but with the Altex, it's emotionality galore, and also with the Altex, it does extremely deep bass, not just deep bass but subsonic bass as well, and you do not need a sub. So the PA1 with these Altex, it plays bass deeper than a CJ system with the Nola subs or those gigantic Meridian subs added to it. It doesn't make as good bass as the PA1 with these Altex. So I hope this helped for decision making, and thank you. Bye bye.